Hello, everybody. It is Sarah Boothby and David Tenson, and I'm so excited to have David here to talk about lifespan, young adult children, the elderly. I have little kids, so we're going to talk about all those things. But I wanted to just introduce David Tenson. If you're watching, it's probably because David's here. You found it on YouTube. But in case you're watching because of Sojourn, David Tenson is an amazing poet from Australia. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He's got a crazy resume, and he's also a chaplain right now at an aged care home. And he was involved, he was helped me publish Love and Love's Energy, and he edited, and he's done so many wonderful things for me. I saw David did this beautiful post about lifespan, and I've been thinking about that. And so I thought, why don't we connect and record our conversation? And so here's David, everybody. And I guess, David, maybe you could share some of what you initially shared on your post.
Yes, thanks, Tara, good to be with you. So my some of this thinking's been sort of stirring up in me for maybe the last year, maybe a bit more. My daughter turned 20. She's my eldest a few days ago. And so I've now got, I used to be able to say I got three teens, and now I've got two teens and a 20-year-old, and she's studying nursing and she works in aged care as well. And I got two sons, they're 14 and 16. And for probably over a decade now, I've been, a fan of a maturity life stage model system that was put together by Jim Wilder and others at the Life Model, and they call it the Life Model maturity stages. And it basically goes through five stages in across the lifespan. It borrows from Erickson's kind of lifespan, and of course there's a lot of other people, whether it's Erickson's psychosocial model or some of the others out there. There's really, a lot of things that talk about whether it's Piaget's or Kohlberg's, or there's a lot out there in that thing. But Wilder's was pretty simple. It said at infant stage 0 to 3, childhood stage 3 to 13. Adult stage starts at 13. So they use sort of this idea of you're an early adult at 13. You're a young adult. Don't sort of subscribe to the teens, but because we're talking about maturity, psychosocial maturity. You're an adult stage until you have children, or you helping to co-raise children, is a term that I like to throw in, because more and more people are having less kids, and but are wanting to be involved in child rearing as well. So you then enter parenting stage, and then after that, when your youngest is in adult stage, so for us, when my youngest got into 13 and became an adult, the invitation then is to enter elder, become an elder, into elderhood. And that model's a bit different than others, because some others go on chronological age, some go I know Jung's has different stages as well. So I'm sort of entering. I said to Natalie, because we talked about it for years and years, even when our kids were younger, I'd speak about this publicly. I said we've got like 6-7 years to go till our youngest is 13, and so we're in that. And I'm asking myself, what does this look like? What might be expected of me in a maturity way, and what does it look like post-parenting? So
Mhm.
that's the overarching, I guess, muse and question that I have, because what I'm seeing, particularly now working in aged care and spending more time with people we would call those the sunset years. These people are in their, once you move into a home, it's kind of like you're here. This would be the last place. This is the last bus stop. This is the last stop on the train station. We're here to help you, uh, you know, die as comfortably as possible, and while you're alive, to make that enjoyable and fulfilling as is possible. And as a chaplain, you provide spiritual care, and that can look like anything from running a little church service to spending time with. I bring my dog in for some of the people that love animals, and we've got people that are atheists and zoologists, and all sorts of people. So we do whatever we can to provide spiritual care for them. And it's just been more and more confronting. And I also came across some fantastic teaching by a guy called Stephen Jenkinson. Really recommend his stuff. He did a documentary a few years ago called Grief Walker. He was a palliative care counselor for many years. And I keep hearing this same rhetoric, Tara, around we have this generation of are now boomers born from 46 to 64 who are moving into retirement. And in 25 years, I don't know what it's like going to be like in Canada, but I believe it's probably very similar because you guys were on a similar trajectory to us, that in 25 years, a quarter of the population will be over 75. And so I'm asking myself, as I move out of parenting over the next active parenting, of course, I still have to teach my kids to drive, and there's still things that we do, but more and more our kids become independent. Do I extend midlife for as long as I can? Do I take up the call to mature and become a bigger person? Do I want to relive my 20s and the lost years that I had, and travel the world and get a big inherit? All these kind of things are running through my head because I see it in this older generation. And Stephen Jenkinson and others have commentary around that. They said it's like we've lost elders. We just have people that have extended midlife. And of course,
Mhm.
that's not a universal statement, but a statement that seems true nonetheless, because even if my daughter wanted to buy a house now or save up to buy a house in 3 or 4 years' time, she'll be competing with somebody who's cashing in their superannuation or 401k, whatever you call it in your countries. And she won't be able to buy a small home because she's competing with grandma and grandpa, and the price of homes has gone up astronomically. So even this whole idea of we probably have to live, the smartest thing would be to live intergenerationally, like they have in most other
Yeah.
non-developed countries, around the world. And if they do, what person do I need to be and what culture do I have to create around the home, Tara, um, to enable that, to not to make it happen, but at least for it to be a possibility. If it Because I think a lot of people's hands will be forced economically. But that does require, and I don't need to tell you this, that requires a largeness of soul, and it requires everybody to do the work. And I
Yeah.
dare say that it requires the post-parenting stage people to really do the work, um, let go of some things, stop being the hero. I've got a whole lot of thoughts around that.
I think that's interesting, and it's too because we're in our 40s, you and I, and we're Gen Xers. So I think about this too, and I hear tones about what you're saying, like the boomers can be more vocal about their views on structure and order, and even the millennials that's who we're sandwiched between, and we're kind of the anarchist rebellious generation.
Yeah,
But then you and I are so aware of the importance of philosophy and theory and psychology and theology, spirituality.
yeah,
Uh, and so where do we fit? And like you're saying, I love your idea, or Jim Wilder's idea of 13 is the beginning of adult or young adult. That makes sense from an attachment perspective, from an emotionally focused therapy perspective, because so much of the adulting is focused on independence.
hmm.
And then our balance. So I'm putting so much out there because I loved everything that you said, but the
Yeah, go
balance
ahead.
between our identity as the sandwiched Gen Xers, or however you're sandwiched, you don't have to be in your 40s to feel this. And then also influence and independence, like
Yeah,
the independence of the child, independence of the parent, the independence of our elders. Um, yeah, so I'm not sure if what you think about that or what you'd like to say as we're thinking together.
yeah. Well, what else are you thinking?
Um, I'm also thinking about existential crisis and existential epiphany. And
Hmm.
that some of the tones so my father-in-law is 89 and he's in the autumn of his life for sure. He's in the hospital right now. My husband's with him. and my children are school age, and then most of my friends are like you who have these young adult children. So we started late. And and so when I have conversations with my friends, it's that this existential crisis and hoping to land an epiphany about we want influence on our children and it's not guaranteed. And then we also want influence on our elderly parents. And that's a whole other strange problem.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And then I think too, our parents still want to exercise their independence. And, like, I don't know, we have, even clinically, this idea of you have a duty of care
Right?
to those that are vulnerable, but then they also have the right to exercise the dignity of risk as this spectrum, you know. And to explain that, if people aren't sure what that means, that would mean like even in an aged care home where I work, you might have somebody that is aging in place, which means we don't move them off to another ward or facility if their care becomes too acute. If their family say no, that's their room, that's their community, they're their neighbors, they're the people that care for them. We want them to stay there. But they might develop sort of start getting some quite acute dementia, and they go we call it walkabout. They go missing, or they might have an injury and they keep falling over. And the clinicians, the nurses, and doctors might say, "Look, we really recommend that you move mum over to this thing where the doors are locked and they can't be out on the street because we found her down the road. She'd fell over and nearly drowned in a pond." Now, the family has the right to say, "You know what? Let mum go. That's the dignity of risk." And we say, "Sign here," because we have a duty of care to say, "I think she could be in a better place." And so that becomes this, I think, challenge and beautiful language and idea too around what we think's best for our parents. Because as I'm experiencing too in the chaplaincy, is a great grief, Tara, that comes with aging, in that you lose ability.
Mm,
You and because loss looks like lots of things. The ability to walk, the ability just to drive your own car,
yeah,
becomes a huge game changer for most people. I'm looking at my son who's 6 months away from getting his car license, and I can see the excitement, and we know what that looks like. Most of us might remember, like, as soon as I got a car, like, life changed. It's at my friend's house, it's a McDonald's, I did all these things. But to lose that and to go back into dependence is a big deal. But also to lean into your existential crisis thing too. Some interesting works done by Richard Beck and others.
mm,
Is it Richard Beck,
yeah,
around the denial of death? And Stephen Jenkinson also agrees with how uh, insulated that we are from death, and how most people deny death. And some of the most pleasant, beautiful people to care for are those who know, this is my last station. I know where I'm going. This is it. And death is a welcomed next process. Um, those who deeply, deeply struggle are those who are afraid to talk about it, because we have to, in our role, say, what do you want at the end of life? Which is a nice wish that, in most cases is never fully fulfilled, because it creeps up on us, happens in strange times and places. And that existential crisis is hard too. But to quote the poet, I think Rumi said this, that, you need to die before you die. And I think it's part of the Christian message too, is to accept
yeah,
death is part of it, but it's not the end. And when you are able to embrace that, I think you're also able to embrace some maturity, you know.
yeah. I love that. And it's one of my SSU peers, St. Stephen University peers. He's alumni. He's a palliative care doctor out in
Mm,
Abbotsford. Stephen, I can't remember his last name, but I'll write it in the description. In
lovely.
his book, uh, Dying for Life, and he talks about these three births, like our physical birth, our
Mm,
spiritual birth, which could be baptism from a more traditional Christian point of view, but other people might acknowledge it a different way depending on their faith base. And then our final birth or death is our birth into afterlife. And you know, we're holding in this. So this idea of we're all facing our death anxiety. But so
Yes.
my little ones are just starting to discover death. They're just starting to talk about it because Papa's in the hospital. And so what's so normal with the little ones is then they think about pets. So they're talking about their cat and how long that our cat is going to live. And
Mm,
that it seems so interesting in
mm,
therapy. And you might have seen this too. The little ones will come in and they're brokenhearted about the pet, but they're not talking about grandma. And that just makes sense.
yes.
And then the teens, as they're going on and they're, those good old days when we felt more indestructible and we're facing death anxiety in a different way, the question of invincibility. And then you and
Mm,
I in our 40s, and my doctor just did my medical, and I don't get one test. I get three varieties of every test now because I'm over 40. And then
yes.
our parents who are in the autumn, they're in the twilight of
Mm,
life, and their friends are moving on and their siblings and and then I feel some pressure to try and be in charge of it all for some reason.
mm,
And I think that's normal. Like I think that's the sandwich generation, the
yeah.
sandwich pieces. Somehow I should know what we're all doing when how the heck are we supposed to know?
Yes. Yeah. Others have talked about this before, and I think it's true. Part of the reason we, in this whole idea of living with this denial of death, we're so removed, Tara. So,
Mhm.
you know, I can't remember the last time I saw any animal slaughtered or killed for dinner. So we just buy the pre-packaged mince and meat and chicken breast in under a nice fluorescent light at the supermarket. We don't have to face the abattoir.
Yeah.
We are, a lot of people pass away at hospital or during the night. We don't have to watch the horrible deaths. I've been witness to that now. I've watched people pass away from liver and kidney disease, and some of those. A lot of chaplains talk about their first patient that died with them and how that sticks with you. It's an arresting moment. Um, we don't learn how to grieve. Like not too long ago, if somebody in your family had passed, you would bring the body back into the home for people to be around
Yeah.
the body and to grieve and to be with it. They would go in a room in the house called the parlor. But we now call that very same room the living room, the room of the living. So even our phrasing has changed to highlight and celebrate life, but also to remove us from what is absolutely inevitable.
Yeah.
Absolutely inevitable. Everybody dies. And I don't care how much God heals you in your lifetime, one day that gives way to death. And and I think it's Steve Jenkinson put this very, very well. He says we've turned grief, and you would know Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. He says we've made it a little pathological and depressive because it's most of us don't face it so often. And and so we've made it this thing to avoid. And if you uh, don't if you don't experience and move through grief well, you end up with grievances,
Mm.
which is a really interesting thought. And he advocates for, I mean, this guy sat at the bedside of maybe 800, 1,000 people in his palliative career in what he calls the death trade. And which is a crude name, but it's what it was. People came there to die, you know. Even the home I'm in now, that I work at a few days a week, we've got 120 residents, and you probably have 30 pass away every year. So we have a quarter of the population turns over every year. It's quite a lot if you think about it. It's a passing every sort of week and a half,
Yeah.
and often it's just winter comes and a lot happens at once. Um, but that to say, he advocates we should practice grieving and get better at it. and not pathologize it in the same
Yeah,
way we don't pathologize other things. And I think that's a really interesting invitation and discussion, particularly for the West. Yeah,
I think so too. And I've actually, that just it hits a huge light bulb for me in the work that I do with people is we make friends with our emotions. And when they show up, we notice the escalation of the feeling, and I can communicate with my feelings. I can help people to see, okay, there's my emotion. How do I make sense of that so that I can maintain my footing with other people? But grief, it's like an epiphany for me right now of like, yeah, grief is just another human experience to make friends with.
absolutely.
And it's unyielding, you know?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. And if we, I think that's a lovely thing to make friends with it. Um, again, Kubler-Ross's stuff is great. Um, but it's old too. It's an old theory. Um, and it deserves, I think, to be revisited even clinically. And as we do this more internal family systems or more naming emotions, or
Yeah.
in the Christian inner healing area, you have practices and approaches like heart sync. You personify and you become friends, and you choose not to label. And what if grief wasn't good, wasn't bad? It just was what it was. But we certainly wouldn't pathologize it or call it a bad. And it is a hard emotion, but it's something you get better at. And chaplains that I've spoken to that have been in the trade for a while say they do get better at it, you know. Particularly if you've grown fond of and built a relationship with some of the clients, the residents, those you serve and spend a lot of time with, you miss them. There's people that I think right now, when this person passes, that'll be a tough day,
Hmm.
you know. But I get to practice the grieving and not avoid it, not distract it, be able to maintain my footing. And I think that is probably a skill that is worth learning into elderhood, into eldering.
Hmm.
That's
And
uh,
the mystery, there's
mm,
this spiritual practice that we are, especially in the West, we're so bad at mystery. And William Paul Young will say that as we age, like children are better at the mystery.
oh yeah,
My son used to say, I can see it with my magic eyes. He would find things in the house. And I love that story because it reminds me of their ability to hold space for mystery. And grief is loaded with mystery. It feels like an ugly feeling because we only have fiction about the afterlife. We don't have good data.
that's
We got
right.
a bit of stuff. We got a bit of stuff, but that's hard. We like to control things.
We do. Yes, there's no empirical evidence of definitely what happens after we die from a conscious perspective. There's just stories and speculation. It's not biological, is it?
No. And then this dignity, like you said, the duty of care, and you talked about dignity and
Dignity of
with
risk.
dignity of risk and in my work we say dignity and respect.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so with even with our kids and with the elder, the seniors,
Yeah.
it's this matter of supporting them with dignity and that duty of care,
Mm.
that holding them lightly, like holding out. Sometimes I'll say we parenting with your child on the palm of your hand. If we hold on too tight, and that's scary when our parents and these senior people who we love are facing death. We can't hold on tight.
Agreed. And it's also complex, becomes very complex and nuanced too, if dementia is developed,
Mhm.
and in its many forms, um, because um, it's the same body and the same person, and everybody around them carries the memory of how they were in their personality, but they in themselves don't remember who they were.
Yeah.
We have one husband who comes in, and his wife is has dementia and is quite advanced. She's physically still very capable, but he comes in, he'll sit next to her in a little devotional service or something we'll have. And once, as he was walking out, he looked at us, the other chaplain and I, with glazed sort of eyes and said, even though he'd been sitting with her for an hour, he said, I just really miss her. And what he
Yeah.
meant was, I miss the soul that was in there before that remembered who she was, that was part of her identity. Um, and so that's complex too, as a carer. What do you do? And I understand in some countries in the US and other things where the 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 cost of putting aged people in high care homes is so huge, they're sending them overseas. Some people
Mhm.
are having to put their mum or dad on an aeroplane to Thailand because it's a quarter of the price,
Yeah.
and then has to fly over and visit them. I mean, it's complex, and we're facing that in this very individualistic culture, Tara, and there simply is not the resources to be caring for that level of need in society in the next quarter of a century. There's not. So there are, I work with some researchers at the university where I'm doing my PhD who work in this whole retirement space, and we talk about it quite often. I just pick their brains. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, like it's going to be a crisis because there's an expectation in a generation that, well, I'll be able to stay in my home and nursing people will come in my home and look after me all the time. Now, I work in aged care. Those staffing people are not there. I don't care how, we are importing people. We are inviting people from Nepal, from Indonesia, from the Philippines into Australia because Australians don't want to do that level of work. There's not enough people to do it, and there certainly won't be in a couple decades' time. So what what's the reward of an intergenerational living home and what could be expected from the rest of the family? That's an interesting discussion because the wealth that the boomers and the late X's have
Mhm.
um, banked on for retirement simply is not going to be there. That they are categorically the wealthiest generation to have ever lived in the West. That hands down. We just a lot of people won't have it. A lot of people my age won't have it. A lot of people in their 30s, my kids certainly are less likely to have it. But we're living for longer. So there's a lot going on there. And there are economical and sociological, political things. I'm asking the question, what kind of person do I need to be able, like, do I need to become to have a large enough soul that I can die before I die in a way, not compete with the younger generation. I have unanswered questions. I've got some things that I'm mulling over. I think might be a way to go. But what is interesting is this. I just did some literature search a couple of weeks ago on the word parenting. My university library gave me 250,000 returns on that search engine of parenting books and literature around parenting. Eldering, Tara, the word eldering had less than 1,000
Wow. Yeah.
because, and even elderhood is low. All those things are low. So we've maximized parenting. But what is it? And you work in this space. I want to be a good parent. How to be a good parent? Who do you have to become to be a good parent? The research around parenting and raising children, it's astronomical. But after that, you're on your own. You know, live the good life. It's been fine for some of the generations before us, but it's just not going to be around. Just it's not
It's,
possible in Australia, at least. So
oh yeah, it seemed fine, but then, like in conversation, I was in this book club and Perry Zan was there and and Stephen, who I can't remember his last name, that wrote the amazing book we're discussing. And they were speaking as people who have a few years on me about how it's like we all just think we're promised 90 years. And I think that that's that leans on what you're saying too, is when our selfishness about life um robs us from considering death and dying. And so it's very unpopular to think about the problem that we're all facing. Like what you're saying, this is a big problem. We don't
Yeah,
have the care, we don't have the finances.
yeah, that's correct. And it's a psychosocial problem as well.
Yeah.
In that, I'll try and speak frankly here. I think the biggest danger will be that my generation, your generation, us in our 40s, move forward and think that we're going to live the good life like our parents did. Um, and on the whole, and I'm just going to speak from personal experience here, n equals one here in this. There are a lot of people that I meet that are 20, 30 years ahead of me in life, but as far as emotional maturity, interrelational maturity, they're still infants. They're stuck. Trauma, they're stuck,
Yeah.
and it's about the next thing and the next purchase, and they're still, Tara, trying to be the frickin' hero, you
Hmm.
know? They're still trying to, those that are esteemed in that age bracket seem to be those that are able to do things that I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
Travel the world, make millions, live in this amazing home, um, do 30 push-ups, that's esteemed. Not, here's what I'm doing in my community. Here is the grandparents. Here are the grandchildren that I'm caring for. Here is the wisdom of soul. Here's this guy that I ran into at the dog park in his early 30s that I was able to offer some simple advice to. You don't hear from those people because they don't want the accolades. I think
Yeah.
this is the irony of this, that you move from what's called from a hero's journey to really a post-hero's journey. You're not interested, and I'm talking from a hero's journey perspective. Um, you're the post-hero. You don't want for that anymore. You're the wise old sage. And I think the other part of this, Tara, which I've also been churning around about, which is, and my wife commends me for it. And you may have seen the article that I wrote around menopause. My wife went into early menopause because of some surgery. So
Yeah.
we've been experienced what it looks like to be our age. And then I've got teens moving through puberty and my wife moving through perimenopause in this distinct biological shift that happens in a woman's body around that age. And the invitation that presents the woman and society to embrace what's after this. Now, men don't. We have andropause, but it's certainly in no means, I don't think, as distinct and as abrupt and as transformative as menopause is in women. And again, understudied, under-researched. But I actually think there is, if we are able to embrace it and grab hold of it, and if it's esteemed and accepted and taken out of the stigma that say puberty is in teens, I think it will make this journey into eldering, into saging, into aging, into what the thing I'm working on in my manifesto is this idea of being a decentric becoming, not a
Mm.
human being, but somebody that is eccentric in but decentered at the same time. That I'm no longer the hero and the focus. I've gone from being uh, egotistical, egological as a child, sociological, socio-focused as in my teens and 20s to somebody that's moved beyond that. And I'm no longer at the center of my circle. I no longer have anything to prove. I no longer need to be the center of attention, the hero of the story.
Hmm.
I can have, I take everything that's demands attention in the center and I move it to the periphery.
Hmm.
Here's a question we both love Trinitarian theology.
Hmm.
If the Trinity is a divine dance, which I think is a beautiful idea of the Father, Son, and Spirit in this circle dance, hand in hand is often this picture that we have. emptying and being filled, emptying and being filled. What is at the center of that circle?
Well, I'm curious what you'll say, but my guess is, my whole self and
Mm.
all of humanity's wholeness, like our good and our bad. The hero is both good and bad. The risk is the hero doesn't discover that their bad, their trauma, their pain spots is wholly loved just as much as their grandeur. That's the post hero.
Yeah,
I think the post hero is thriving in that circle in the center. But I'm curious what you would say because it's a metaphor. So,
it is a metaphor. I don't think there's anything in the middle, and I don't think there needs to be.
hmm,
I think there's no thing in the middle.
no thing. Yeah,
Everything is pushed out to the side. And I don't want to get too sort of nerdy here, but even at like a subatomic level, if you look at things from a quantum physics perspective, quarks are some of the smallest, uh, measurable, capturable um, sort of material phenomena scientists have been able to find. And quarks are never alone. They're in groups of two, three, four, five, six, and they're always spinning.
yeah,
And there's nothing in the middle of that as well. And I wonder if that's the invitation is because there's mystery. You could say there's mystery in the middle. There's no thing in the middle. Everything's in the middle. Nothing's in the middle. I think it's Parmenides or some of the 12th century philosophers says that God is a circle where, and I'm trying to get the wording right here. God is a circle with with which center. Basically, they're saying that God's a circle and everything's in the middle of it, but its circumference is nothing. It doesn't exist. God is a circle where everything exists in the middle of it, but it has no circumference. So there's all these ideas people have been throwing around this, and they use this circle, which is why I kind of settled on this decentric becoming. I don't think there's anything in the middle of the Trinity. I've seen messages and heard people say that you're in the middle, and and that's fine, but I think again, like it's put you in the middle, you know?
yeah,
Technically, we're in Christ, and Christ is on the edge.
yeah. It's
Christ is
hard to.
outside of that.
I love that, David, and I like what you're saying. No thing and no thingness is so Buddhist,
It
and
is, yeah. But
there's
it's
this
also apophatic in its Christian tradition, right?
sure, and the practice, like Thomas Merton, who I adore, he understood no thing. He
Mm,
understood nothingness, the contemplatives, the mystics, the Buddhists, and there's this. Yeah, I think I'm kind of I like the idea of the no thing. It is mysterious and it's not void and it's not deprived of God. It's this peaceful thing that I think you're driving at. And maybe kind of like in my book, that loves energy, like a mass
yes.
of water.
Yeah.
There's times when I really am in my post hero that I float on my back. And maybe we can dip into that no thingness,
Mm,
but our final death, our final
mm.
birth into afterlife, that's where the mystery starts to be more uncovered. I don't think we get all the answers as soon as we leave this body.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm too much of a fan of Dante for that one.
Yeah, and I think here again is sort of our grasp of knowing. We want to know what
Mhm.
happens. We want the certainty,
Yeah.
Um, and I think if a part of this, philosophy or idea of a decentric becoming is that I let go of knowing.
Hmm.
And to Bernard Loomer as a process theologian and philosopher, who had that, and you might have seen the poem I've written about having a fat soul, and he talked about having a fat and enlarged soul, that you could maintain yourself and your integrity, but you just became a larger person, and to do that, you have to be able to embrace ambiguity, the not
Yeah.
knowing. because again, we've placed and look, I mean, you have higher education. I'm working in academia now. We pride ourselves on knowing. But Stephen Jenkinson says knowing is not the same as learning. Knowing is a storehouse of data. Learning is you pay a very different price for learning, and
Mhm.
sometimes really learning something and embodying that means you empty that storehouse of knowing.
Yeah.
And I
And I
think,
just read N.T. White quote that's like, it's not that knowledge is, I'm paraphrasing, not that knowledge is in love, but that love is in knowledge.
mm,
That there's and I so love, no thing, ambiguity. From an attachment perspective too, love energy is just the corrective epiphany, this co-regulation
mm,
that even with you and I over Zoom, you're in Australia, I'm in Canada, and we're co-regulating. Like when you mentioned no thing, that washed over me in this way of like, yeah, there's there's something so important in what you are alluding to that few words can hold it.
mm. Which is why we lean on poetry and the arts,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because poetry can help. Poetry is helpful. I mean, I think there's the Bible is proof of that. Metaphor
Absolutely.
and poetry works.
Hmm.
So, so I'm wondering, my specific question, like when people are facing, like whether we're supporting someone or we're facing death ourselves, and I'm just wondering how to offer care. Like my roots are existentialism and meaning focused therapy, so I'm like, well, Viktor Frankl, like encouraging people to live with meaning at the capacity that they can. But
Yes.
I was really curious how you view that.
I'm still thinking about that. Thanks for asking. I'm still thinking about that. Um, Again, in this decentric becoming idea, nothing is right or wrong, and it's not like meaning doesn't belong. It just shouldn't belong in the center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially after what you just said.
Yeah. And the quote was, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere.
Oh,
It's God is a circle, yeah, whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. And in this decentered idea, it might be that I'm looking for meaning and it's quite a focus. But once it's found or once it's spent enough time in the middle, I think it needs to move out into the edge.
mhm.
Because if now people, if they're listening to this, they won't get it. But if they watch this and I did put my microphone between you and I, this is now centered.
Yeah,
And the problem is I can't really see you and you can't see me. And that's just a physical example of, it's like if you go out for dinner and there's a nice, center in the table of some flowers, you have to move it aside because it hinders perspective. I can't see you really for who you are, Tara, if I have me trying to find my meaning or me trying to get my retirement or
yeah.
me trying to work out this thing theologically or me trying to heal myself, and that all belongs, but just move it out, move it into the periphery.
It's an ingredient, it's not the solution. And I will say we can be addicted to meaning. And from my model, my perspective, that I totally agree with you. Meaning can become a block. So we're so much more aware of the ugly emotions. All of them are valuable. Like all of our perspectives are valuable, but the uglier ones we try to hide and not view. So just as grief can be a block, anger can be a block, resentment, all of these things, good things can be a block. Over joy, false joy, over
Yeah,
meaning over meaning. I love meaning. I can overdo meaning and then I'm not sitting and contemplating.
yeah, yeah. We can overdo everything. Yeah, even the good things, I
Even the
think.
good things.
Yeah, or even things that might be, high priority, you know, in our view, in other people's view, you can overdo getting fit. you really can overdo a lot of things, and you might get fit. You might, be able to do some amazing things in your life and into old age. But I bet you that has cost you. I bet the time at the
Mm.
gym and the time at the marathon and the time reading about it and the time you spent every time you go to a barbecue or something, you talk to somebody about it. Fine, I know what's at the center of your circle. And maybe together we can grieve about everything that has stopped. Even people who just get obsessed to healing. I've got to keep
Yeah,
healing. I've got to go to this journal, that thing, and read that. I've been there. It's exhausting for everybody else, and other people miss out. While you're doing your 12-week silent retreat, we were busy wiping your mum's ass at the nursing home because you weren't around. you
yeah,
know like we had to get on with life. Well, you were busy finding yourself.
yeah. I often think of like of Henry Nouwen, and I think
Yes.
that well, I hear you in some of the same sort of existential longing to move into being more of like Henry's fabulous, and he was
Yeah.
just being human alongside of other humans, and he's easily forgotten and often missed.
Yeah.
Like Thomas Merton too. I mean, Thomas Merton is exceptional. Everybody should know Thomas Merton and Henry Nouwen, and most people don't.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Even just to go look up Henry now and on YouTube talk about vulnerability at a church. Have you seen that? And he's brought people from his disability community with him, and he holds them as he preaches, and he talks to them in language they can understand. It's a divine inclusivity that's hard to put words. I cry every time I watch it. It's, you know,
Yeah.
I must also be my Dutch roots as well. It's a vulnerability.
Plus, it's like it's post-hero. Henry Nouwen was post-hero
Yes.
for a good chunk of his life. And
Yeah.
Thomas Merton wrestled with that post-hero and doing enough and not doing enough, and the necessity of contemplation. And then, thinking about our view on death and the fear of grieving.
Hmm.
So what I will say, and I still believe it, is that death is the measure of life.
What do you mean by
And
that?
well, I think oftentimes, so if a child is taken, that's a measure. There's this tragedy and this sorrowfulness of it's unnatural for a child to be taken before their parent.
Yeah.
Um, However,
Yeah.
Jesus understands them more because that
Yeah.
was Jesus's experience. Jesus came back to life. Um, but then to or an adolescent that I am indestructible, and the 20-year-old who goes off and does something foolish because they have no or limited death anxiety.
Hmm.
Even in our as we age, there's different measures. A mother who passes and her children are in school or something like that. So an old man, an 89-year-old man in the hospital with his son who loves him. And I don't, that's it. To me, that's ambiguity. It's something about love energy. It's something about that grander mass of nothingness of what I think is really loving.
Yeah.
Um, but we always have a measure. There's always, it's just life is gonna measure out at some point,
Hmm.
and it's always just really sad.
Yeah.
Dying is gonna hurt.
Yeah. 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 It does hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's felt. And sometimes that's a deep physical feeling. Sometimes that's a deep wondering. Speaking
yeah,
to a gentleman a couple of weeks ago who's been living with a disability, early onset aging of some conditions, and he said, I wonder if I'll be missed when I go, which is a common question, Sarah. I wonder if I'll missed, and I wonder if my time on this world mattered, you know. They're big questions that are common, and sometimes that's the pain. That will I be remembered? Will I be held? Will I be held in memory
Mhm.
of others? And for how long, and what will that look like? And I don't know the answer, And the other question is can we decenter that and put that on the edge here? You know, is that something we're capable of? Maybe not. Maybe there's some things that demand attention in season. I'm not sure.
Mhm. And we don't have to have those answers. It's more of the being with that that co-regulation with you. But too often we try to answer, and I don't knows are very important. It's like I
Yeah.
don't know, but
That's-
here
yeah.
we are.
I could say with a sense of confidence, this guy said, I'll miss you, you
Yeah.
know, I'll miss you. I appreciate you being here. And I mentioned a few things that he brings to the community there, you know. Um, I'm sure your daughter and your grandson and your wife, they'll miss you. Beyond that, I'm not sure, you know. Sometimes the suffering, and this is true because of modern medicine and everything. The true suffering towards dying for most people, of course, is not universal, but on the whole, it's very compacted. It can be just a small number of years.
Hmm.
You might live 80 years, and two of those years might be in this sort of rapid dying stage, where the suffering isn't, over the length of a lifetime. It's less than 3%. It's quite small. It used to be longer. People were very long suffering.
Wow.
We have shortened that. So while people are around and capable and able, um, yeah, it's a different proposition. So what do you do with what the days that you have living? What do you offer? Maybe part of the answer is how do you hedge your best bets around being terribly missed? And if you want to do that, then you have to
Mhm.
be involved and offer value in someone's life. And you don't when you compete. You don't when there's nothing impressive. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I am not impressed. Staying in my own lane here. I'm not impressed overly when somebody in these sort of twilight years tells me about, some great physical or travel feats that they've accomplished. I'm like, it's good, but there's kids out there and young people that would really, if you plumbed the depth of your wisdom, your time, you'll be missed.
Yeah.
You'll be missed if you've invested in people's lives. And I'm going to add to that, Tara. I think, church communities, we were at church on Sunday, and they had an offering, and a part of the service was around things, and people were, giving towards. We have a profoundly cool community center where we go to church, where we attend church. That does a lot for the community. It's got playgrounds and parks and gymnasiums and amazing things, and the community really benefits from that model of building. And the church meets in a small portion of that building, and so it's very community focused. And you see young and old, giving offerings or making pledges or whatever the case is. And there's just an example. And I said to my wife, I wonder if this is really uh, a picture of everybody's desperation to really live in intergenerational communities. Because and if you're part of an active church that is intergenerational, it's something you begin to experience. And I will see my 16-year-old son be pulled up and talked to by a 65 or 70-year-old. That is not his one or two granddads, He's only got a couple of people like that in his life. Uh, so I think there is something deep within us that wants to really live in family and community that is intergenerational,
I agree. And
you
that
know.
my friends who have been raised in a collective culture
Yes.
understand love in a way that is so gentle and reassuring to me. When I talk to my Muslim friends, I
Yes.
have profoundly beautiful conversations about spirituality because I'm just discovering God's love.
Mm,
And so yeah, I think too, like there's some of what you're noticing as well is just this the importance, the focus is this legacy.
mm,
And legacy is not a golden chalice. Legacy is that the well, sometimes from an attachment perspective, we'll call it like mommy dust. So when mommy dust is like my spot on the couch, if I get up and leave and I come back and there's a child in my spot, they're just getting a hit of mommy dust. But there's still that thing and the grieving,
mm.
um, the anticipatory grief is
Yes.
to be able to live a life that when we are noticing our autumn and our winter is coming, that we can have those moments where we offered mommy dust or daddy dust, sun dust, brother
Mm,
dust, you know,
yeah.
chaplain dust. Like, how are we feeling with others, being with others?
Mm, yeah. Yeah. If you think you live forever and you deny death and you don't spend every moment with people as if it might be your last because you think you live forever. And
Yeah.
you do hear profound people that go through near-death experiences or other things, have this revelation and live in this really enviable abandonment and freedom where they're able to, they've been compelled to love who they're with in that moment and genuinely do that, not from a place of like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, put a put a little meme up on Facebook, spend every moment with people like it's your last. Beyond that, they don't have to. It's just it's felt and it's a presence, They haven't made themselves the hero of people who spend every moment with others as if it's their last.
Yeah.
But it is felt. And there's a reality, this strange sort of training and transfer of skills in chaplaincy. Uh, there are times where because I'm only there 2 days a week, and if somebody's palliative, I'll say goodbye to them on a Thursday, or we do a visit. And I just have to take a deep breath and realize that you won't be here when I come back on Wednesday.
Yeah.
It becomes a reality. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And that mystery of it and leaning into the unknown, um, all of this. So this is okay. And I think what I view with dignity and respect when people are young adolescents trying to figure out their life and they need to fall flat on their face a few times. Obviously, we want to provide care and good advice, but just the same with the young adults as with the elderly, it's that holding space for hope and peace and comfort and then I believe as an attachment therapist, the greatest influence is just presence.
Yeah.
Trying to tell my kids what to do doesn't work. Trying to tell
Yeah.
old people what to do doesn't work. Trying to tell me what to do doesn't work. Sometimes you've been successful. Like I've listened to you many times actually, but nobody wants to be told what to do.
No. Yeah, we do and we don't. We want the answers, but we don't want to be told what to do. There's an irony. We want all the
Yeah.
wisdom, but we want to think we've come up with it ourselves. It's just doing a PhD has been terribly humbling. I can tell you that because you are, you present this cake you've worked on for a year and they're like, we don't want that kind of cake. It's missing all these ingredients and you should have done that. And if you considered this kind of icing and you're like, oh, what do you want?
Yeah,
It's a big
exactly.
slice. So I'm meditating and writing around this decentric becoming, and then I'm getting this feedback from reviewers, and I'm like, oh man, I'm having to eat my own words here and realize I'm not that shit hot and I don't know that much, and I'm being reschooled, and this is a whole new sector, and yeah, you don't
Yeah.
know. You
Great.
don't know. And that can be a blessing and a curse. But I just want to backtrack very quickly to and perhaps I should have started this with a disclaimer. The problems that you and I are talking about here are largely white problems and neoliberal capitalist society problems. That, yeah, our Muslim friends, our developing country friends, our Chinese friends, people from collective cultures, they're actually beginning to see the disruption and this movement towards what we are living in now. That, yeah, everybody I've talked to, people at university and at work, from Nepal, from Iran, from all different nations, and they're like, yeah, like the economy is growing and families are dispersing, and that collective whole idea of living with Nonna, living with Grandma, living with Oma, living with Opa Pete, all that is sort of beginning to disseminate, and there's a sense of loss. But what we're living at this, I think I dare say we will be forced to backtrack and live more
Yeah,
collectively,
I think you're
even
right.
ecologically, right, Tara? Even ecologically, you just can't fill the world with that much concrete
Well,
and that much consumption.
we married church and state, and economy has become God, and with that individualism, and then that is the antithesis of love. And so I agree with you that, maybe that's part of it, is getting slow, creating space for no thing, like you've said. And then also looking to the wisdom of the culture groups who are doing a better job of loving. Go home and love your family. That's what Mother Teresa said. You want to
Yes.
change the world, go home and love your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
That's
know
beautiful.
there's
So we should probably
complexity
wind
around
things
it, but
down. Yeah,
hmm?
other things. We should probably wind it down unless you have some
Yeah,
more
let's wind it down. Yeah. It's been,
golden thoughts. This is I just love talking to you, David, and I think that you have a way with words, and you are a very informed individual, and I like uh, traveling on the trail with you, even though time
thanks.
zone doesn't permit much for us.
What's the time there? It's
It's
PM.
after 3 now, and I know it's like, is it 7? What time is it?
7:30 in the morning. It's all right.
Yeah,
It's light here early, and I'm an early riser, and my wife starts her shift at 6:30, so it's okay. Yeah. But
awesome.
lovely spending time with you, and thanks for sharing your
Thank
wisdom and
you.
your questions and holding space. And it's the first time I've, been sort of expressed this stuff beyond Natalie. But yeah, I'm hoping to put this stuff in a manifesto, in a book of sort of ideas to start this conversation. And because I think there's a groundswell, and we're feeling it. Our generation, people in the cuspers. I'm born in
Yeah,
'78, so this idea of people that are born around '98 feel stuck between millennials and X's, and we are now sort of in various stages of parenting. But we're looking ahead. Maybe another good 30, 40 years. I mean, my gosh, it's a second lifetime.
yeah,
Um, who do I need to be?
yeah. Who do I need to
Yeah.
be? Beautiful.
Who?
That's a wonderful question. Okay, well, thank you so much, David. And then I'm gonna start a different series with some of my friends. So I'm gonna reach out to you in December or January to do
Lovely.
another vlog with you. So
All right. Thanks, Tara.
thank you.
Blessings. Ciao.